Welcome to USA Global TV and Radio, where our mission is to provide education, entertainment, hope, and inspiration. USA Global TV and Radio connects you with experts and audiences all around the world every single day to help you succeed in business and to live a richer life. Visit us at usaglobaltv.com to learn about career and life-changing training and mentoring programs like the Listening Mentor. Subscribe to our newsletter to stay informed about our special programs and offers. Discover how you can become a guest on one of our shows or a host or producer of a USA Global TV and Radio show of your very own. That's USA Global TV and Radio, where the doctor is always in.
Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are in the world. This is USA Global TV and Radio, where we provide world-class education, entertainment, hope, and inspiration. I want to thank you for joining us for the Corner Bookstore. This show has become so popular. We actually have 4 television hosts who are leading interviews of incredible authors and publishers from around the world. So today is no exception. I am thrilled to welcome the host of this particular episode, my very dear friend, my own personal book coach and editor. He's been with me through 17 publications. And I don't even want to tell him I've got a couple more coming. Sorry, Red. His name is Red O'Loughlin, and he is joining us from the great state of Texas in the US of A. Welcome, Red.
Howdy, Dr. Jacqueline. I want to say you look absolutely stunning today.
Thank you. You're so kind. I appreciate it. It's good to see you. I feel like it's been a little while.
It's always great to be seen rather than viewed.
Well, Red, you have a number of incredible books yourself, and you are also the host of The Wise Ones coming up right after this, and you also have your own segment as an expert presenter on Talking Heads. You've been with me since the beginning, I think for 3 years. I know you've got to be sick of me at this point, but it's not about me. So let's go over to you so you can get this show started and bring out our phenomenal guest.
Thank you so very much, Dr. Jacqueline. We're honored today. We have an amazing author. When I was doing a little bit of research on her, okay, wow, that's interesting. And I think that's very typical of the authors that we see on the USA Global TV and Radio Network here on the Corner Bookstore, because we bring in very good ones. Most of the time, they're very award-winning, multiple award-winning, as is our guest today. And today we have Steffanie Costigan. And if you'll join me, Steffanie, we can get into who you are and learn a lot more about you.
Hello.
Howdy.
Howard.
Now, you're up in Alberta, Canada, is that right?
That's correct. Yep.
So we're in a truly worldwide audience today. So we got Florida, Texas, the great state of Texas, and Alberta, Canada. I'm interested. Was World War II still going on when you met your husband down in Australia?
No.
Uh, I see that you started writing at a very young age, but for some reason, World War II has had a fascination in your mind. Tell us a little bit about your early writing days and how World War II kind of preoccupied you a little bit.
Okay, well, yeah, I've been writing for a while. My parents said that I graffitied all their walls with stories. But I had actually some neighbors who were from World War II. They lived in Nazi Germany, and they were very lovely people. And I would go and visit them quite often as a little girl. And they would tell me all these war stories and kind of like what it was like experiencing that time and living during that time. And that just really piqued my fascination.
Germany is a very interesting place. I lived there for a couple of years in the late '90s, and you're right. There's a lot of history there, a lot of stories, some which were told, some which have never been told. And I think stories are the way we capture our imagination. As an author, you're capturing your brain story and giving it to us. And so you started writing at a very early age, 3, I think is what I remember. And
Yes.
I'm sure that's changed a little bit over time. Uh,
Yeah.
but but how did you had dyslexia back then? That must have been on top of everything else a challenge. So tell us a little bit how you discovered you had a dyslexia, and then how did you manage to cope with it?
So, yeah, growing up, I'm a '90s baby. So, I don't think they knew very much about, dyslexia at that time, especially because I was raised in, like, a little small town, so they definitely didn't know. So, it was really discouraging because I really had an interest in stories, and I wanted to read, but I could not for the life of me. I remember trying to sit down with my father and go through the alphabet, and I was just really struggling, like, getting them mixed up, and they were scratching their heads, and they couldn't figure out why, like, I was struggling so hard. Um, but yeah, no, it was hard. I I remember even in school, like, I didn't have the nicest teachers, so I would be asked to read something out loud, and I would stand up, and I would, be scared. I'd kind of freeze because I couldn't read and I got embarrassed. So I've had some sadly, I've had some, kinda traumatizing experiences with, like, some teachers hitting me because I couldn't read, but, I guess they didn't know back then. They thought I was being funny, but I just really just couldn't wrap my head around things, but, over time, my passion was stronger than you could say my weakness because I really loved, the art of storytelling. I just even remember being a child and playing outside and feeling the wind, a gust of wind blow by. Over here, it's very windy. And I remember looking up at the sky and just thinking, "Oh, it's an invisible dragon. It just flew past." So,
So are you still dyslexic today?
oh yeah, I am. But I've
Okay.
learned some tools to cope with it. Yeah, fortunately, dyslexia does not go away. There's no medicine or anything you can take. You just have to, I guess, learn some strategies to really overcome it. And, thank goodness for technology because, I do journalism. So it's a big part of my life is reading and writing, but I have tools that help me overcome my weaknesses. Like I have my computer can read things to me when I get stuck, or I have things that can help me with my grammar.
Okay. So are you familiar with the dyslexia text, the fonts?
I am. It helps a little bit, but doesn't make that big of a difference for me, my case, anyways.
Yeah, Dr. Jacqueline has a number of children's books, and we decided that the very first one to put them all in dyslexia font because many times a child will have dyslexia and nobody ever knows. But if we can help just a little bit, then we've made at least the ability for them to function. So that is one of those things that we learned, and it kind of came about. I'm not it wasn't planned. It just sort of came about. So from a dyslexia perspective, you are one of the experts in the world.
Well, yeah, it's not easy, and I feel bad because a lot of people don't know what's going on, or even the child at the time. I didn't know why, I was having such a hard time. Um, I think it was actually an art teacher that caught on that I was dyslexic because she's like, "Oh, that's interesting," because normally, like, painters paint from light to dark, and I was doing the opposite, and she noticed that, dyslexic people did that in her art class is they would paint from dark to light instead of from light to dark.
I guess
So,
because you can see it easier.
I g I don't know. I don't know what it is, but I think that's lovely you guys have done, children's books in dyslexic font because, oh my goodness, it does make such a difference, and, uh, even if it's a little bit, it's still nice.
So you went to college and you knew you wanted to be a writer, a storyteller, a journalist. That's kind of a passion you've had from an early age. Is that true?
Well, it's funny. I always knew I wanted to be a writer. I absolutely love writing even though I have my struggles. I love it. And I actually didn't think of being a journalist until I had an experience with a journalist and I was like, "Oh, I could do that." I love writing. What's better than to just write all day, you know? So that's kind of where it took off is just um in later on in my life I kind of discovered that I wanted to do journalism.
And with your dyslexia, did you have a serious problem? I realize you had problems, no doubt about that, but you overcame them. So tell us maybe one of the more difficult trials you had that you managed to come out on top. Just give the audience an idea for how much of a struggle this was.
So like for me, I was really scared to go back to school, to be quite honest. Growing up, I was I didn't have the best experience with teachers. I had teachers slapping me, telling me I was stupid or that I wouldn't amount to anything. And it really scared me from going straight back into school. It was actually my husband that encouraged me to go back. And then I got brave enough and I took one or two courses, starting off in creative writing before I pursued journalism. And then it was a real discovering time for me. And I realized that I wasn't a bad student and that I was doing really good, better than I anticipated I would. And then I went into my journalism program, and from what I'm told, at least the teachers say quite a bit, the instructors, is that uh, the journalism program I went into, which is digital communications and media, they say it's one of the hardest programs in Canada just because we're based on deadlines because that's how the industry works. So if we don't hand an assignment on time, it's a zero. There's no if, ands, or buts. So, and it's very work heavy. Like you'll have like 8 to 9 different things you have to achieve in 1 week. Um, so that was hard. As you can imagine, that was not easy for me. But I was just very, very, very stubborn and I think determined. And I did it and I even made the dean's list. So that made me really, really happy. There were definitely trying moments where there was tears and everything, but yeah, I got through it.
Okay, now you did a little bit of time down in Australia. Tell us a little bit about that.
Oh yeah. So oh man, I was young. I was probably 20. I just turned 20 when I went to Australia. I did kind of a service project, you could say. I was going down there volunteering, helping people with service and whatnot, and just getting to know the community very well in Australia. I went to Adelaide in Australia, and then I met this wonderful family that I really got along quite well with. And it was funny because they have a cousin that was in a similar program as me, like actually the same program, but he went to South Africa for his service. And he was coming back home and he moved in with them with his aunt and uncle, this family. And then I met him and I don't know, it just we just kind of clicked, I guess, like right off the bat. I don't know why he liked me because I was quite mean to him, but yeah.
And you all spoke English, right?
Sorry?
And you all spoke English, right?
Uh, yep, correct. We all spoke English.
No,
Mine
just
was a
like
little
my
different.
Texas accent is a little bit different than other parts of the United States. Canada has their uniquenesses with theirs, and we've had a fair amount of Scottish and English guests on here. Had a couple of Australians on here not too long ago. In fact, my accountant lives down in Australia, so I'm sure that there's just little words that don't always mean the same, and when you talk about things, and that's kind of the
Oh,
surprise.
definitely. Yeah, my husband used to tease me about my accent all the time, so yes.
Okay, so you decided you were going to write a novel. You actually wrote what, a screenplay or something like that before that?
Well, okay, so this novel that I just published of Land of the Dragon, I've been writing since I was 12. So this has been like more than half my life project of writing this novel. And then I did during COVID, I did a screen, uh, not a screen, yeah, well, I did like a play. First, I made it into a children's book. Let me go back. Made it into a children's book and then, it was actually for an assignment, and then my teacher loved it so much that she really encouraged me, and then I created it into a play where some kids in my local, uh, uh, city I live in, performed it, and I got to direct it, and it was during COVID at the time, and, yeah, it was called A Stony Gaze, and it's just a different take on Medusa where she's a young girl and there's a lot of gossiping and mob mentality against her, but really she can't control that she turns people into stone because when people look at her and judge her and see her as an object, it just reflects back and they become the object they see her as. But if they see her as a normal person and embrace her, nothing goes wrong, right? So that's kind of where the story kind of took place. And I was really inspired because during COVID, there was a lot of, just a lot of, I think, a little bit of uh, mob mentality and stuff like that, miscommunication going around. It was just crazy. People jumping to certain ideas without taking a step back and seeing how reality really was, if that makes sense. So that's kind of where the idea kinda sparked from for that.
Okay, so then you started in earnest trying to finish up this book here recently. So I'm sure there's more than a little bit of editing and proofing and more editing and more proofing and more editing.
Yeah, right?
Because I know anytime that an author is writing something, it's not just that one time, it's over and over and over and over and over again. And so, from that perspective, you're very familiar with this book. So, one of the things I really liked, I have not read the book, but I was looking at your website and you have pictures of your characters, which I thought was really neat. Tell us how that happened.
So, like I said, I've been developing this book since I was 12, and I got the opportunity to really, really get dive in very in deep depth about each character. Um, at one point, when I was 19, I had a cast of over 100 people that were voice acting for all the characters for like an audiobook. Of course, I would like to redo that because the book has changed significantly since then. And I also use a certain technique in developing my characters because I really, really, a pet peeve I have is when a character, whether it be a movie or a novel, goes out of character to move along the story. That drives me nuts because I'm like, "Oh, that's just so out of character," of them to do that decision. Or so to keep it consistent, I actually use like the 16 personality test. Um, and the 16 personality test, I like it because there's a lot of research about it that's been done, and it helps keep the characters consistent, and the choices they make throughout the novel is consistent with their character, and their personality. I don't just make them make certain choices to move along the story. It's, if they existed, it's what I would hope they would do, right? Within their personality. Um, Another thing that, I guess that really help these characters come alive for me is I love to paint and draw, and I have probably over hundreds of pictures that I drew throughout since I was 12 to, like, current of the characters.
And when you chose these characters, so you're writing, you actually not only have a visual in your mind, you have a picture right there.
Mhm.
That's a mighty powerful author tool that your audience, you have an audience, but you also know that when this person is talking, you can physically see them. You know their background, you have a profile about them, you know their personalities, their quirks, their strengths, whatever. And so I think what you've done by putting that into your website, which I just sent to Dr. Jacqueline, our production engineer, so we can pull that up and people can see it. Uh, the I just think that you've added a lot of extra dimension as an author that we don't typically see. Now, you mentioned earlier about writing graffiti on the walls. I think we had an author a couple of weeks ago, and she had in her kids' room, they write on the walls because she wants them to be creative. She'll go in there and write with them. So I thought, well, that's kind of neat. And, but it seems like every time we have an author, you're Medusa. Anyway,
Medusa.
Medusa. Yeah, having that mindset that whatever the other person thinks, they become. Well, that's kind of a unique way of looking at things. So we get all these little tweaks and uniquenesses, and with your particular case, you've given us the players that we can see, the players that we can read about. So as you're developing it, now I assume there's going to be follow-on novels. Is that a fair assessment?
Sorry, can you repeat that question again?
Do you think there will be a follow-on novel to this one? In other words, part two, part three, part four?
For Land of the Dragon or for A Stony Gaze?
No, for Land of the Dragon.
Oh, yes, I have technically, I have already up to, 5, maybe 7 books already planned out. Um, some of them written, and I'm just going over number 2 currently for Land of the Dragon. The other ones were written more in like um, not a screenplay, but like a play format, just because during the time we were doing the audiobooks for it. Um, but I can definitely easily, put them in more of a novel format, if that makes sense.
So will we be seeing the characters aging as we go through this thing, or morphing into something else as they develop their own life?
Yes, exactly. That's exactly what we'll see, is that they will be definitely changing. Some characters will return, not all of them. Um, but and I'm hoping to, I don't like when, you go into a sequel and the characters are kind of back where they started. So they'll be at a new point, like where they left off in their progression, and continue to progress from there.
I've asked this question to a couple other authors. Sometimes somebody is killed in a book, and most authors, very few, actually will resurrect that character back up again. This may never have occurred to you yet, as if somebody is killed or mysteriously disappears and assumed to be dead, and then 2 books later they show up again, or the ghost of that person shows up again. Any thoughts on that with regard to your writing style?
Yes, I can say I have incorporated certain elements of that in my second novels, or my following series, I should say, of Land of the Dragon. Um, However, like I said, I really am into detail, and I don't like it like resurrecting someone or a character coming back just for inconvenience. There's definitely reasoning behind it, and things definitely in Land of the Dragon 1, things are not always what they seem. So, yeah.
That is so true. They're not always like we see. Now, your book, it's just been recently released. Is that correct?
Mhm, that's
Okay.
correct.
With regard to that book, I see you won a couple awards with it. Congratulations on that.
Thank
Um,
you.
now, I work with a lot of different authors, and we try to get the marketing campaign started the same day the writing campaign is started. Otherwise, you lose out on months or years of letting people know. So, tell us a little bit about how you started your marketing campaign and how it's evolved so that people can find you.
Well, oh my goodness. Yeah, marketing in the publishing world is very different, as you may know from the writing process. Um, there are things that I definitely wish I implemented at the start that, I wish I knew sooner. But yeah, ways that I have tried, like I said, I've tried to get a lot of my community and whatnot involved in my writing even before it was published. Like, I highly recommend anybody that wants to publish a book, don't wait until your book is published. You create a page about it right now, and you just let the people in, let them see your writing process, sneak peeks, teasers, anything, because even if you're like years away from your book being done, it's really smart because you can build a following, and then by the time your book releases, you can have a strong following. Like, I heard of a fellow in Japan who he was all over the news because he sold thousands and thousands of books, like his first release date, and that's because when he first started writing it, he opened up all his platforms. He started his marketing right from the get-go before the book was published. And then by the time it was published, everybody was excited. So everybody was like buying the book. So I think that's what I would recommend for the marketing journey, is uh, to be consistent. Because I think it's easy for authors to get discouraged and then they kind of lay back on their marketing, or life gets ahead of them and they slow down. But if you can just keep it consistent, it does make a big difference, and that's something I'm personally working on myself. It's hard to tell right now because of the screen, but I'm actually pregnant. I'm really close to my due date, and I've slowed down a little bit because I'm just really tired. But yeah, just being consistent in the marketing, sharing. It doesn't always have to be about your book. It can be about your strategies as a writer. It can be many things that people can relate to.
Is this your first child?
No, this is my fourth.
Fourth.
Yeah, last. Fourth is no more.
Let's just deviate for just a very brief moment. Tell us about your kids.
So I have two boys and then a little girl. My oldest, he's actually named after my protagonist in Land of the Dragon. His name's Andrew. I just love that name. And then he's 8 years old, and then I have a 6-year-old. His name is unique. It's Tiankum, but we call him Tank for short. And I don't look it, but I'm half Spanish. My dad's from Guatemala. So if you're wondering why I have a little bit of a unique name there, that's why. And then I have my little girl, and she just turned 3. Her name's Celeste. You might hear her in the background. She's just singing to a show. um, and then, yeah, this one that is due in June is a girl. And yeah, we have, I guess, a name picked out for her. So yeah, we're kind of excited, but definitely the last one.
I'm so happy for you, and my wife and I, my daughter, have daily prayers every day. We'll add safe, healthy delivery for you, for the mom, and for the baby. So we just add
Thank you.
that as part of one of those things that we do. Anyway, your book got a couple of awards. Tell us about that.
Yeah, so it was nominated near December for 5, and then later on in January, 6 different awards it got it nominated for. I haven't heard back from all of them yet because they're not all closed, but so far it won 2 awards. It was the Literary Titans Award in its genre, and then it won this one's recently the International Book Award. And I believe that's near Texas. Yeah. No, no, not Texas. Is Arizona. It's near Arizona. They have a big gallery near November that they do for the winners. Fortunately, I don't think I'll be able to attend that. But yeah, those are the two and then I know it was also nominated for Eric Hoffman Award. Um, I'm trying to think of all of them. I know at least there's four awards that was nominated in the US and 2 in Canada. So I haven't heard back from the Canadian ones yet.
Okay, so we have the writing process, which for some of us is relatively easy. The editing is always difficult. Then you have the publishing, which can or cannot be easy depending on which direction you go in. Marketing, none of us understand marketing. But somewhere in
Always changing.
between, but somewhere in between that, we start out with an idea, and sometimes the title changes once or twice or 3 times. How did you develop Land of the Dragon, and what was the evolution of the the titles you had previous to that? I'm sure you must have at least one.
So, yeah, originally when I first wrote this novel as a child, um, it was actually Star Wonder, and it started off with the focus was more on one of the protagonist's younger siblings in the book, but then it developed to that could be a side story for later on. Um, so it it didn't go through very many name changes. Just went through Star Wonder, and then it developed into Land of the Dragon. And I remember even as a child, I really like, picking names that aren't, that are kinda unique, and I remember Googling and whatnot, trying to look and make sure nobody had that name, um, at that time. And then, um, I mean, as far as names go, most of the names of the lands within the book have changed. Some of the character names, not very many, but some have changed. But yeah, it's just I think it's really grown and matured with me as I've grown up, if that makes sense.
We had an author on recently who is writing a book a week, a short book a week, avoiding eschewing AI. Do you use AI at all in your writing?
Um, AI is kind of new, and I've been writing this for a long time. So I can say Land of the Dragon 1 has no AI. I know like the cover of the novel has Andrew and Tara, and we used models actually. We used real people to model for the cover. Like I'm very particular on the look of the characters just because I have pictures of them and whatnot. So I was very, very picky, and I had this mentality at first because I'm an artist and I love uh, painting and designing things, and I was just going to use one of my own original works, but I decided not to at the end. But I did design the cover, and then I gave it to um, the wonderful designer that kind of I drew it out for her, and I had a whole book, like a whole little pamphlet to show her, what elements I wanted, and the cover has a lot of symbolism kinda hidden throughout it, so I was very I was very picky with the details. She was a brilliant designer because everybody else was really scared to take on the design because they said, "This is really, like, intense design. I don't know if I have the skill to do this," because it was just very busy. Um but she did a really good job. The ones that modeled well, actually, my husband is the model for, the guy on the cover, Andrew, so that's actually him, and then the female was actually also someone, kinda in the family. I'll try to explain this, she's actually in Canada too. It's my husband's cousin's wife from Ontario, so name's Brianna. But yeah, I was just very particular, to pick, I guess, the models to match the look of what I have drawn out, and it's funny because the reason I chose my husband is for the cover is he just naturally really looks like my protagonist, and I got teased quite a bit for that when we were married because I would show pictures that I drew young of, Andrew, and his family thought it was hilarious because it looks just like my husband, the pictures I've drawn on him. So, yeah.
Well, I know one of the things that we typically like to see as authors is a movie trailer that kind of gives you a hint of what's going to happen. And with AI, you can say, I want this kind of dragon, this background, this music, whatever, and boom. And literally it's created for you. That is if you pay, thousands of dollars for a studio to do something, but it's done on your computer. It's just instantly. It amazes me. Now, some of those cost some money, whatever, but regardless, it's interesting how far some of those things have gone. And so as I see your characters aging and the newer lands and everything else, I just did a cover for a guy where I created something and I asked AI to, this is what I want. Then I sent it to a designer. I said, here's the premise. Here's what I want, but I can't get the detail. Here's what I need you to do. So sometimes we can take AI to flush out those things in our brain, but then
Mhm.
maybe send it to somebody who has some intelligence, human intelligence, and say, yeah, humanize this for me a little bit. These are the things that I want that I can't get. I can't say well enough, because if I can say them well enough, I can probably get them. But sometimes we don't know how to talk to AI. And that's part of the problem is, how do you ask the question to get the response you want? So that might be something down the road, you and your PR people and everyone else is there, that might be an option to introduce your second book or third book, or even just come back and pull up the whole series. It's interesting. Anyway, how do people, who's a good reader for you? Who is your audience, and how do they get in touch with you or your books?
Oh, well, my is I guess the the question is, it's for young adults, although I do believe some mature teenagers could probably get away with reading it. I am a mom, so I'm very protective. I've heard others that have read it say, "Oh, this is fine for teenagers," even though I'm just overprotective mother, so that's why I'm like, I think it would be better for young adults, but if they're mature, then but I guess the standards are a little different, you know, nowadays than when I was a kid. So, um, yeah, really, anyone that's really interested in fantasy and in dragons and whatnot, um, and then people can get in touch with me through my website of landofthedragon.com or landofthedragon.ca, correction, or through my platforms, they can message me. I have an email of Stephanie, my name spelt, as you could probably see on the screen, a little different than what Stephanie's normally spelt, but it's Stephanie at landofthedragon.ca, that people can get in touch with me. I'm trying to think, what other questions did you say?
Okay, I think you pretty much answered. How can they get in touch with you? How can they buy your books? They can buy your book off of the website. They can contact you via the website. For our audio audience, Steffanie, 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 at
Yes,
landofthedragon.ca. And
that's
so that's how you would reach her by email and go to her website, and you can buy her books there. And
yeah, they're
anything,
on sorry.
go ahead. They're on
They're on
Amazon. Go ahead.
Amazon, Ingram Sparks, Google Books has the ebook. They're in a lot of places that sometimes I forget. Chapters, I believe, carries it as well. What's that other platform called? It starts with a K, K-O, not Kudo, Kobo?
Kobu.
Yes, thank you. It's on there as well. It's everywhere. So it's not that hard to track down.
Steffanie, it's been really enjoyable chatting with you today. I wish you a safe and enjoyable pregnancy, and continue your wonderful kids' growth cycles and all that stuff. It just, it's one of those pleasures in life. So I
Thank
wish you
you.
the best. And at some point in time down the road, if you feel an absolute need to come back on the show and we can talk about your second book, I look forward to that too.
Thank you so much. It's been a pleasure.
Steffanie, take care, and we'll catch you later on. This is Red O'Loughlin on the Corner Bookstore on the USA Global TV and Radio Network. And we're getting ready to go into, actually, we're going to have another author on the Wise Ones today. It's not one of those things we always have is two back-to-back authors, but sometimes we end up that way. It just happens. Actually, you'll have three authors today because I'm also an author on the third show, but I won't be talking about that book yet because that hasn't been written. But regardless, getting back to the next show, it's called The Wise Ones, and we have an author on there by the name of Mark Morton, and he'll be talking about his books and his process in writing and his successes in life. So from all perspectives, we all have lessons learned. It's how well we learn them and share that information with others. And then after that, I'm on a show of my own called Talking Heads. I'm an expert presenter, and I'll be talking about a deep dive into nutrition, which you really should know, don't know, could know about some of the aspects of things that we either get from our foods or from the supplements we take. So again, Red O'Loughlin signing off from the USA Global TV and Radio Network. And this is the end of our show this week on the Corner Bookstore. Take care, y'all. Bye now.
This program has been brought to you in part by Zane Carson Carruth, etiquette and protocol expert, international award-winning author, television show host, and philanthropist. Thank you to Zane, our official diamond sponsor for USA Global TV and Radio in partnership with E360 TV. Zane is the author of the world's first tooth fairy ever, as well as many other children's books. She's also the television host of Elegance, Polished Demeanor, and Posh Living, seen on USA Global TV and Radio.
Hi, my name is Zane Carson Carruth, and I'm the author of this book, The World's First Tooth Fairy Ever.
Reading is magic. Studies have shown that reading to your children lays the foundation for greater success in life. Reading helps develop language and vocabulary skills. It helps improve memory, and it encourages curiosity and inspires creativity. The benefits are immeasurable, and as a parent, you'll benefit too. In only 10 or 15 minutes a day, you'll be creating more memories and a bonding experience that will last for years to come. So take time to read to your children. Read them books about things that engage and interest them. Tales of fairies and magic fascinate children, and as everyone knows, the Tooth Fairy is at the top of the list. If your child loves magic, wands, adventure, and what child doesn't, you'll love reading them books from the trademarked series, The World's First Tooth Fairy Ever. Follow along as Abella, the world's first tooth fairy, accidentally starts the tooth fairy tradition. Learn the tricks of being a professional tooth fairy in the book, Abella Starts a Tooth Fairy School. Your child's imagination will soar as you read the adventures of Abella and her magic wand. These wonderful books are available at worldsfirsttoothfairy.com and at Amazon, Barnes & Noble, and Walmart.
To learn more about Zane, contact her through her website, zanecarruth.com, ZANECARRUTH.com. Order Zane's books and merchandise. Contact her about being a keynote speaker at your next event.